website. And with that, let's begin. Thank you everybody for joining. This is an exciting presentation, a presentation I've been looking forward to for a couple of months since Ms. Hooley and I agreed and collaborated on bringing this to you all. This is a presentation. You'll notice that the flyer said, how can we support for students with dyslexia, support for the struggling student, how can I help my child with reading? This presentation is all about how do you help your child increase their reading comprehension, increase their reading fluency, because as you all know, the better reader a person is, the more successful they are in their other academic subjects, and then when they grow up and go into the working world. So I want to let you know that we have simultaneous interpretation that is started now. Hi, Bayana. I see you just logged on. Bayana, you're on mute, so if you could unmute. There we go. Interpretation has just begun. We have Miss Patti Arvide. Thank you, Patti, for being here. If you need this information in Spanish, si necesita esta información en español, en la parte inferior de su pantalla verá una esfera que dice Interpretation. Puede cambiar el idioma de inglés a español. If you need this information in Arabic, we have Miss Bayana, who is here supporting us. Thank you, Bayana. You would go to the bottom of your screen. You should see a sphere that says Interpretation, and you change the channel from English to Russian. Even though it's in Arabic, Zoom does not have an Arabic option, so we select Russian. And Ms. Bayana will be doing the simultaneous interpretation. I want to introduce Ms. Jennifer Hooley, an expert in this topic, and we are so thankful that she agreed to bring this information to you all. The information for today's presentation is titled, How Can I Help with My Child with Reading? And Ms. Hooley, we're all ready and excited for you to share with us. So welcome, Ms. Hooley.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Hooley, and I'm an instructional specialist at the district office. I have been teaching, this is my 27th year of teaching. I taught first grade for 17 years, sixth grade for 1, because that's not my forte. And then I was a literacy teacher for the last 8 years, and this is the first year I've been here. My passion is teaching kids to read. It is the great equalizer for all of our kids. And so I'm super excited to be here tonight to help hopefully give you some strategies that you can use at home to help your child with reading. So let's get started. Okay, so first I want to say there are some typical and common signs of students that are having difficulty with reading. And it's outside of language, right? Our kiddos who are learning English, they need more time and support to develop that oral language in English, but you can help support at home in your primary language as well. But the big thing we have to know about teaching our kiddos to read is that our brain is not wired for reading. Our brain is wired for oral language. So it's super important that our kiddos are developing their oral language in their primary language, whatever that is at home, and then also in English at school, so that we can marry those two and develop their vocabulary. So knowing that our brain is not wired for reading, there's lots of tricks we can do to help the brain learn how to read. So some common signs you might have with your kiddos is they have trouble hearing sounds. So for example, if I said cat, what's the first sound you hear in cat? And they can't say k, they say t or d or a different sound. They're having trouble hearing the sound. So they need a lot of repetition and practice with that. Another area your student might be struggling with is sounding out words. So when they get to words as they're reading, and let's say the word is pig, and they say pig, and then they say pat. Their brain is having a hard time holding on to those sounds and blending it together. Your child also might be having trouble with fluency. So that is reading with automaticity. Can they recognize words quickly, or are they having to stop and sound out every single word? So that's another area that we're going to focus on tonight. The last area is spelling or writing. They have difficulty sounding out words, correctly putting words in the sentence in a grammatically correct way. Maybe they have trouble organizing their thoughts when they're writing. So these are all signs that your child might be struggling with reading, and we're going to talk about some strategies to help with each one tonight. So first, this is the hardest one because our children tend to save the crankiness for us at home, for the parents. But it's super important that we create an environment a lot like the classroom for them at home. So you want to set up a quiet, well-lit, distraction-free space. Now, I know because I was a soccer and volleyball mom, sometimes you're on your way to practice and you're trying to get homework done. So no radio on the car. I know we all have busy schedules, so do your best to do homework at home in a nice, quiet place. It's sometimes difficult to do this, but it's super important that you have a positive attitude at home. Try to reinforce their good behaviors. I really like how you sat down quickly to do your homework tonight. You didn't argue about it. So you want to build their confidence by giving them positive feedback. Sometimes it's hard when it's the end of the night, but avoid criticism where possible. So now let's get to the homework. So there's some strategies that you could use at home that would help with all of those areas that your student might be struggling with. Reading aloud is going to be the biggest bang for your buck. So if you have bedtime routine and you read to your child every single night, whether it's in your primary language or in English, either one, it both benefit kids tremendously because it builds their vocabulary, their understanding of how language works. It also helps build that prosody, how we talk. We're not talking like robots like they might be reading. So reading aloud with your child every single night is super important. I know my kids are physics majors, so I don't know how that happened, but they were really good with language arts, and I read to them up until 8th grade. So it is really, really, that's going to be your biggest bang for your buck, is a good bedtime story every single night. And then you can ask questions. It opens up for discussion. It's a really good way to get some insights into how your kids are thinking as well. A multisensory approach. That's a really big teacher way of saying, when your kiddos are doing homework, it does not matter what grade level they are. Even the big kids need this. This is how their brain is going to process information. They need to see it, they need to say it, they need to hear it, and they need to feel it. And I'll show you what that will look like as you're doing homework. One way with our little kids is you could trace letters on sandpaper as they're talking. That would help them as well. Another big teacher word, phonemic awareness activity. So basically that means listening for sounds. So when I was little, we played the name game, Hannah, Fana, Fofana, and you just changed the first sound in the word. You could play rhyming games. You can count the sounds and words. It's just training their ear and their brain to listen for the sounds and words. It could be isolating each sound. So what's the beginning sound? What's the middle sound? What's the ending sound? Or it could be listening for rhyming. And they will need practice with that. Another great strategy is audiobooks. However, listening to the audio while they're following along in the book. That will also help with their fluency, their vocabulary, and their comprehension. I'm not always a fan of technology. However, I really like this one right here. turning on closed caption, whether they're watching TV, video, streaming appropriate material. Having the closed caption on trains their brain to look at the text at the same time as they're listening, because that goes back to that see it, say it, hear it, feel it. And then daily practice. Repeat, 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 rinse and repeat again. That's really important. They should have 10 to 15 minutes of reading practice every night. Now that's outside of you reading to them. So that's them practicing by themselves. It could be, if I'm in kindergarten, it could be me practicing saying the sounds for all the letters. If I'm in first grade, it could be reading words. It could be reading passages or sentences, I'm sorry. When you get to upper grades, it could be reading paragraphs, passages, or whole books. If you can, sit next to them while they are reading, and then you could catch mistakes that they're making while they're reading. So I was trying to come up with a way to help with homework. So these are some sample homework sheets that you might have. Every teacher does it their own way. However, typically, there are two types of words on your child's homework. There's a decodable words. So if I look right here, those are words you can sound out. The sounds match the spelling. So for example, in the word shop, there are 3 sounds, sh, ah, p, and the way we spell that matches perfectly. So the sounds match the way we spell it. Homework will also have irregular words. They might be called high frequency words or sight words, but they don't match the way that the sounds don't match the way that they're spelled. And I'll go into that in a little bit. So usually, especially K through 2, your homework will have both types of words on it. It's important that they practice both types. The irregular words are going to be the ones that you want to spend more time on. So for the decodable words, the sounds in the word match the way that it's spelled. So there's a couple of ways that you could practice that. So you could do the pound in sound. I like this one because you don't have to have anything with you and you can do it all the time in the car on the way to practice. So for example, if the word is dog, they can pound the word dog, and then they can count the sounds. D, ah, g. So there's 3 sounds. D, ah, g. Now they're going to write the letters. D, D, ah, O, G, g. Those are called Elkonin boxes. Big fancy way for just using boxes. The other thing you can do, let me exit out of this so I can move. The other thing you can do is draw some boxes on a piece of paper, use anything, Cheerios, candy, whatever you have at home, and they can have them move. That goes to that see it, say it, hear it, and feel it. So for example, if the word is dog, I'm going to go d, g. And then down here, I might write the letters that match. D-O-G is dog. And then you could continue and just keep practicing those words on their homework list that are the decodable or the words they can sound out. So if the word is fish, it would be fish. And then you could attach that to the letters. Okay. The other type of word, you could also use magnet letters. You can find these at the Dollar Tree, and I use those and a cookie sheet from the Dollar Tree. So if they're doing dog, it would be, oh, sorry. I forgot how to use during Zoom. All right, so if I'm doing dog, I would go d, and I have extra boxes there just to try to trick my kids to make sure that they know how many sounds are in the word. The other thing you could do with your, the other thing that you could do is you could change the sound in the word. So one of the things that's hard for kids is if we're changing one sound of the word. So let's say that the first word on my spelling list is bash. So I would go b, and then in English, sh is spelled sh, and it's one sound. So I would put both letters in that box. And then I want them to change one sound. So change one sound, change b to k. So I would come here. Oh, it's not working. Let me move it up here. Okay. So I'm going to do it outside of the boxes because I can't switch it. So here's my word bash. I want to change the first sound in bash. I want to change b to k. So the kiddos would have to change the B to a C. Now change cash to dash. They would have to realize they have to change the C to a D. So you would keep doing that, changing one sound. You could also change the ending sound. Change dash to dab. They would have to figure out they have to change the last sound and move it here. You could also do multisyllabic or 2 or 3 syllable words with our older kids. So for example, if they're doing the word construction, they could put the first syllable construction, and they would spell each piece in each box. And you could still use magnet letters with them. Believe it or not, they like that. So those are a couple of ways you can practice. The pounding and sounding is probably the easiest, and you don't have to buy anything. So pounding and sounding is just saying the word dog and then saying the sounds d, g. Now, these are the hardest words in English. Your teacher might call them heart words because you have to memorize them by heart. You can't sound these words out. They also might be called irregular words, high frequency words, sight words. These are the words that your students will need to practice more often reading and spelling. So they're irregular because their spelling does not match the sound. So for example, for the word said, the sounds are d. So it should be S, that matches. Is in English is an E, a short E sound, but we're going to spell it with an AI. You want to point out the part of the word that breaks the spelling rule. So when you're practicing the irregular words, it's slightly different than the words you can sound out. The words you can sound out, you're doing the sounds first, and then you're attaching it to the letter. For irregular words, you're not going to practice sounding those out when you're reading. You're going to sing and spell. So for example, once I realize, oh, even though it says I'm going to spell that with AI for the word said. After they learn that, then from that point on, then it's singing and spelling. S-A-I-D, said. You can spell it like a giant, spell it like a dog, spell it like chicken, just to practice in a different way. But you're going to practice singing and spelling those words. And when you say it, you're going to say the letter name, not the sound. And again, these just require daily practice. I made flashcards and my kids practiced reading and spelling them every day. And just because we finished that week, that doesn't mean they disappear. They need to stay in the rotation occasionally just to keep that in their brain. So you might see some of our schools are using a program that calls them heart words. So you might see flashcards that look like this. And this is just a reminder that this AI is the part that they have to remember by heart. That's just the little trick for them. All right, so now we've practiced reading words in isolation. We've practiced spelling words by themselves. Now we're going to take it from words by themselves into larger text. So it could be sentences, it could be whole passages, it could be whole books. The best thing to do for your kiddo that is struggling with reading is to read the same passages 2 to 3 times a day over several days. So when I was a literacy teacher, I taught K through 5. For my kids, when we got to the passages part, we read the same passage 2 or 3 times in class, and I did it for 3 days at a time. Now, your child will say, that's boring. I've already read it. I already know it. So to mix it up a little bit, I would have them whisper read it to themselves first. Then I would use voices. Read it like dad. Read it like grandma. Read it like your teacher. Read it like your little brother. Just so that they're doing it a different way, but they're still practicing it and it doesn't seem as boring to them. But you want them to read the same passages 2 to 3 times a day and then 3 days in a row. You can practice reading in words by themselves. Actually, with kinder, I would start with letters and letter sounds, then move to words, then phrases at the park. When she said short 3 to 4 word phrases, and then you can move to passages. The goal for all of our kids is to recognize words automatically so that they don't have to sound them out. Now, the first time they read, they might have to sound it out a lot, but by that 3rd day, they won't have to, and they'll recognize the words. And then, sorry.
Sound like Miss Hooley to read that second bullet point as a chicken.
Oh, okay. Chicken, can I read it like it? Okay. How do I do chicken?
I don't know. That was one of the suggestions that
you can practice with words, phrases, and or passages.
That's right. Yeah, and I remember being at Orlando Elementary School and watching one of the instructional specialists there, the Miss Pia,
Yes.
who's fantastic, and she would have the students read the same passage over and over. But as you mentioned, as a dog, as a grandmother, as a baby, and those kids didn't see it as work. They loved it. They relished the opportunity to practice it again because it turned it into fun. So I really love this message that you're giving us, Miss Hooley. It's turning something that could be seen as mundane or boring into something that students are then enjoying to do. So parents, I think that's a really fantastic strategy and tip. Thank you, Miss Hooley, for that.
So the more our kids practice, the more they will recognize the words automatically. And if they recognize it automatically on the passage this week or on the homework this week, then the following week when they encounter that word, the likelihood of them recognizing that word then is higher. So it's super important to do repeated readings. And like Dr. Cisneros said, change it, mix it up. Sometimes I have my kids stand up and read, sit down and read, lay down and read, just so that they don't realize they're reading the same passage 3 times for me. Some of you might see some fluency practice that's coming home that looks like this. When I say words, it might look like this. It's just a list of words that has a specific skill. So for example, all of these words on here are practicing the sound for SH. So they're all practicing sh. So that's what all of those words are. So these are decodable words they can sound out. In our primary grades especially, you might see a decodable story or book that comes with it that matches the sound for the week. So in this book, this story, it's called The Ship. They're practicing that SH sound again. All right, now it's your turn. Which strategy do you think you could try tonight? Anybody want to share? Be brave. You can type it in the chat. I will say I have 2 boys. So for them, they were really into sports, so I always picked an athlete for them to read like, to practice their reading. And then in between their passages, the other thing that's super important at home, they need breaks. So they shouldn't sit for more than 15 minutes at a time. So for my boys, for example, I would have them read like Karl Malone, and then I have them hop down the hall and hop back, and then we do the second read. Just because sitting for that long for kids is really hard too. And so sometimes homework would take me longer, but I knew if they're sat for that long, we're going to end up yelling at each other. And it's not going to be productive time or practice. So keep in mind also giving breaks is super important. And finally, communicating with your child's teacher. So your first ally is your child's teacher at school. So if you do have concerns about how your child is reading, then be specific. So instead of saying they can't read, because all kids can read, it's just what skill level they are at. Maybe you could say, they're having a really hard time hearing the sounds in words. So if you're more specific with the sounds, the teachers can then support with some specific things that matches the homework that you're getting. Collaborate on solutions. So for example, when I was a first grade teacher, my parents couldn't get the homework done Monday through Friday. It's too much, especially our kiddos were going to after school events and things. So I changed it. So my homework went home Friday. So they could do things on the weekend. If they knew Wednesday night, they weren't going to get home till 10 o'clock at night. So if that is something, you could ask your teacher for support with that, or ask for strategies, books, materials, things that they have that they could send home with your child. And then most importantly, just continue to maintain that open, ongoing communication. Set up check-ins with the teacher. So if I checked in with, or if I said, hey, I'm really concerned about this, and you work on something for 6 weeks, check in after 6 weeks and see how they're doing. Has it helped? What other things could we start working on? Because it's always a progression. Our students this isn't going to be a magic bullet that's going to fix everything for our kiddos in one night. It does take time. And so maintaining that communication with the teacher will be really important.
Ms. Hooley, we received a couple questions in the chat, but I think one I'd like to bring to you now is how long does a break have to be depending on the child's age?
So I would say for K2, I would just give them a 2 to 3 minute break is enough. Older kids, 3rd through 5th, they can sit for longer. So maybe they could sit for 20 minutes and then a 3 to 5 minute break, and then 20 minutes and then 3 to 5 minute break.
So then the suggestion, if I understood it correctly, is for younger kids, a K through 2, to read for, you said 2 to 3 minutes and then take a break? Can I read that?
They should be able to work for about 10 minutes and then 2 minute break.
I got it.
2 minute break.
Got it. I understood that incorrectly. And then somebody else says, sorry, I joined a little late. Do you have any specific suggestions for children with dyslexia?
It's going to be all those things we just did. The repeated reading, the practicing sounding out, all of those things, and doing it all the time and constantly. That's how we help our kiddos with dyslexia.
Beautiful. Thank you. And just for our parents, if you joined a little late or if you need to leave a little early, remember that these sessions are always recorded and held on our Alvord YouTube page and then also on our district website. Thank you, Ms. Hooley.
Does anyone have any other questions?
All right. So first, I just want to say thank you, Ms. Hooley, for these really good and comprehensive set of suggestions. So first, just a note of gratitude. Now, parents, this is an opportunity for you all to ask any additional questions, maybe something you're dealing with specifically with your child. You can either put it in the chat or you can also turn on your microphone. We have Ms. Hooley here, and she is the expert on this. We're thankful for her expertise. We'll open it up to you all. Questions? Okay, well, hearing none, then just want to say thank you again to Patti, the interpreter who's helping us in Spanish, Bayana who's helping us in English. Ms. Hooley, thank you for no worries, Blanca, no worries. Thank you for this information. And then Ms. Hooley, if parents still have additional questions, who do you suggest that they go to? Who do they seek for support?
They can always reach out to their child's teacher. You can always email me if you have any questions. My name is jennifer.hooley@alvordschools.org, and Hooley is WHOLLEY.
Is that like a heart word?
It really is. No one ever gets it. And then I will work with Dr. Cisneros also. I had some links to some resources that are really good for, especially if you're concerned about language. So this one's called Storyline Online, and it has all the it has actors. It's put on by the Screen Actors Guild. So it has actors reading books, but they also have the text so that they could read it. This is a YouTube channel that will help with sounds. Readingrockets.org has some great resources on that page for parents. They have a specific tab for parents. It looks like this. And you can click on literacy at home, and it has everything. Oh, pop up, sorry. It has everything that we talked about today in here also. And finally, the Libby app is wonderful. It's free through Riverside Public Library. And they also have audiobooks. So that would be a great place where the kids can check out the book, but also have the audio so they can listen to it as they're tracking and reading the book. And it's free, and it has a ton of books. It's a really great app that you could download. So I will work on getting this to everyone and sending this out. These are all really good resources to help our kids with reading.
Ms. Hooley, we did have 3 questions that came in the chat. So I'd like to bring them to your attention now. First, my son tends to play a lot while he's doing homework. What can I do for him to sit still?
I did this with my boys. I set a timer. So and then I bribed them with Skittles or M&Ms. I'm not above bribery. So I would say you have to start small. So for my kiddos, when they were in like first grade, for example, I would set a timer for 5 minutes. If they worked hard for 5 minutes, they could have a Skittle and then take a break. If your kiddo's really active and has a lot of has struggles paying attention, they're not going to be able to work for 10 minutes. So you're going to have to start smaller. So start 5 minutes, take a 2-minute break, 5 more minutes, 2-minute break. And I bribed my kids because while I was a teacher and could teach 25 kids and they would all listen to me, my kids at home were not the same. So I am not above bribery. Timers work really well. I would use my phone, and I would have my kids set their 5-minute timer, and they knew that they couldn't play around during that time. And you have to be strict in the beginning because they're going to fight you on it, as all kids do. They're pushing their boundaries. So in the beginning, they're going to try to fight you on the 5 minutes, and you have to be strict and nope, it's work time. Nope, it's work time. And after a few weeks, it will pay off. But the first few weeks will be rough.
Thank you, Ms. Hooley. We have a comment that says, I have a treasure box with reading comprehension, writing, and mathematics, and I give them points. And through those points, they can get something from the treasure box. So I think that's also really good.
Yeah.
You use the word bribe. We say incentive. Yeah, that's right. I'm not above bribing either. my daughter, I had to do some bribes as well when she was little. And, I just got to say, I taught mathematics and I have a master's degree in mathematics. But when I would help my daughter with her mathematics, I was always doing it wrong, according to her.
Yeah.
It's just kids. So
Yeah.
parents, we went through it too.
Yes.
Okay. Another question that came is, what are some strategies for students that struggle and are afraid to attempt the reading and start melting down?
That is actually the biggest hurdle. So this always breaks my heart because those kids know that they struggle with reading. So, when I was a literacy teacher, those are all the kiddos that really, really struggle with reading. So the first 6 weeks, I did nothing but build their self-confidence, because if they don't have faith in themselves, they won't take risks and try for you. So I purposely gave them easier things to read that I knew that they already knew how to read, because then they feel successful. Then you can start to add in the harder things a little bit at a time, and then they'll feel successful at that. And I pointed out to them, I'm like, look, guys, remember last month you guys you wouldn't even try to read these words, but you've built yourself up. So I would spend 6 weeks just on loving them and building their confidence, give them much easier words to read, whether it's starting with letter sounds or smaller words, so that they can feel successful at that, and then start layering on some harder words for them, some harder sentences and harder passages, because that's going to be your biggest hurdle. I've seen it a lot, but once they have the confidence in themselves, you will see them blossom. So it's okay to take that time to build their confidence, because in the end, that's going to get you where you want to go. So don't feel like we have to do these words tonight, we have to read this passage, because if your kiddo really is struggling with their confidence in themselves and their ability to take risks, we have to build up their confidence first, and then we can attack the academic skills that they're missing. So build up their confidence, give them lots and lots of praise and love.
I love that. And yeah, Elizabeth says, that is great advice. Thank you for sharing this idea and this information. Isela says, how can I help my son with spelling?
Spelling words you can sound out? Yeah.
Isela, do you want to maybe expand on that? Spelling words that could sound out, or something else? What else would it be, Miss Hooley, besides words you can sound out?
Typically, spelling is words they can sound out in the homework. So I would start with boxes, and you could use Cheerios, chips, Goldfish, whatever you have at home. And let's say this week your child is working on the CH sound. So they have to move a chip. I'm calling this chip. They have to move a chip for each sound in the word. So let's say the word is much. They would go much. Then I would have them take their pencil and write much. What sound did you say right here? You said what letter is that? That's an M, so they would write an M. What letter says They would hopefully say U, and then have them write the letter U. Right here you said ch. How do you spell ch? And they should know it's a C and an H. So you want to tie in the sounding out part with the spelling part. So you're always, for kids that are struggling with spelling, I would start with moving something, because that's that see it, say it, hear it, feel it. So they're feeling it by moving the chips, and then also when they're writing, and then they're saying it and hearing it at the same time. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Well, Isela expanded on that in the Said, my son knows how to read, but when he's going to write, he doesn't know how to write most of the words.
So he's memorized everything?
Oh,
Yeah, so he probably has a really hard, I'm just guessing based on what you're telling me right now. He might have a really hard time hearing the sounds in words, which makes it difficult for him to spell and write. So he needs to work on hearing the sounds. So this would be a really good strategy for him.
yeah. And a lot of kids, when they're learning to read, they develop strategies, almost like survival strategies, correct, Ms. Willie, where they know you're probably going to ask them what they're reading and what the word is. So they memorize, but it's that memorization doesn't always translate into comprehension. So thank you, Ms. Hooley. Samantha says thank you. That's what's been painful. Samantha was a parent who asked about students melting down. She loves reading and she loves school. She'll sit on a pile of books. She just struggles. She'll sound it out slow, but struggles putting it together and it gets jarbled. We'll keep it slow. It's just hard when her younger sister is passing her. We try to show her any and all wins.
In that case, which makes it harder on you as a parent, I would separate them during homework time. Because my kids were like, I had one, he just grasped it really easily, and I had one that had to work harder at it. And so I made sure that I did their homework with them separately because I didn't want my kiddo that it wasn't that he wasn't capable, he just needed to work harder at it. I didn't want him to feel not have the self-esteem to try when his brother's just whipping through it. So I know it's harder on the parent when that happens, but if possible, I would try to separate them during homework time.
Thank you, Ms. Hooley. And it looks like those are all the questions that we've received so far. Again, parents, now is your opportunity. You can also just turn on your microphone and speak the question if you have something additional. Okay, well, hearing none, I think I'm going to just kind of wrap up the main takeaway. Well, there's a lot of takeaways, right? But the main takeaway that I heard Ms. Hooley give us a little while ago was if you're still needing additional support, we have all of these resources, but your first line of support is your child's teacher. And at all of the elementary schools, as I believe, Ms. Hooley, that was your job, right? We have literacy specialists, elementary literacy teachers who can support your child's reading comprehension, phonemic awareness, all of that to support their reading. So reach out. Hi, there's a friend waving to us. Hello, mijo. So reach out to your child's teacher and see what ways that your teacher and the school itself can give you that additional support. And then if you don't mind, Ms. Hooley, I'm going to share my screen briefly. Parents, I'm going to just remind you where our resources and recordings are going to be held. So this is the alvartschools.org website. You go under departments, educational services, and family engagement. It says webinar recording. That's one of the links. And we have all of the webinars that we've had up here posted in both Spanish and English. I'm a little bit behind. I've up to March, so this one will be up soon. But you'll notice that when you click on the title, you have both the English recording, then the Spanish recording. And then if you'd like to go through the presentation slides themselves, you can click on it. And this one was a parent's guides to anti-bullying. But we have this for all of the sessions that we've had this year. So let me put this in the chat for you all, parents, so that if you'd like to go back through either this presentation or any others that we've had this year, it's available for you. And on that note, again, a very special thank you to our guest expert today, Ms. Hooley, for this presentation and this discussion. Thank you to the parents who asked questions. I know it's a lot more engaging for us as presenters when we have interaction. We don't want to just talk at you for an hour. We really want to get deep with you and make sure that we're able to address your questions. And always, always, always a big thank you to the hardest working people in the room, the interpreters. Thank you so much, Miss Bethy. Thank you, thank you, thank you